Opening her eyes, she didn't even realize where she was at first. It took a couple of minutes to reconstruct the events of last night. Outside the window, a new day was beginning. The clock struck 6 in the morning. The girl glanced at the bed. No change. Her sister was still asleep, curled up on the couch. Steph quietly rose and went to her room. Olga still hadn't come to her senses and she was beginning to have misgivings. What a pity that grandmother had died before she could prepare them well. Now they didn't know what was really going on with Olga and how to help her. Standing under the hot jets of the shower, the girl tried to make at least some plan of action. It is clear that there will be no deal with Anton. They need to get their sister back. And in general, to stay together, they are sisters. Meanwhile, Alice woke up. For a moment it seemed to her that Ollie's eyelids fluttered, and she rushed to her sister. Olga was still in a strange state of either sleep or unconsciousness. Fema assured them that the doctors would not help, and they could only wait. In another time, Olga was surprised to find herself on a deserted road. It appeared to be a country road. She had a strange feeling of lightness, she almost couldn't feel her body. The girl tried to remember the last events before she got here, only remembering the headache and being thrown into a mirror, though no, it wasn't a mirror, she remembered almost everything. After she found that glass ball and took it in her hands, it suddenly trembled, began to heat up, and lightning flashed in it, before Olga's frightened eyes. The ball became so hot that she could not hold it, and she dropped it. At the same time, a strange spot appeared on the wall which shimmered with silver light. It looked like a bizarre mirror. Olga reached out her hand out of curiosity. She wanted to touch the surface of this spot mirror, but suddenly fell somewhere and lost consciousness. It was a time portal, she realized that now. What she couldn't remember was who had been in the tower with her. There was definitely someone else there. And the second thought was that she hadn't created that portal, she had been sent here on purpose. Olga found herself on a small hill. The road here diverged in different directions. She had to make a choice. 500 meters away, she saw the outskirts of a settlement or a village. The girl hurried there. Maybe she could get help there. The streets greeted the visitor with silence. A couple of dogs lay idly in front of the gate. A flock of geese were dozing in a small green meadow. Olga did not recognize the place, did not understand where she found herself, and in general what time it was. It was hard to tell by sight. Such houses in the countryside are not uncommon. Where are all the people? As if hearing her question, a man appeared on the street. He walked slowly, shuffling gait. He looked about 80 years old, dressed in a shirt and pants, clean and neat. His hair was long, dirty and tangled. A local bum? Suddenly, in the yard of one of the houses, loud shouts and swearing were heard. Olga crept up to the fence and peered through the gap between the boards. Two girls, young, beautiful, and subtly similar in some way, were arguing in the yard. "You will not go!" The tall, black-haired girl was almost shouting. She seemed very familiar to Olga, as if they knew each other. "Fimka, I'll tell grandmother everything." Don't you dare, threatened the other one. "You're our sufferer, why is it always you? I'm sick of it." The girl abruptly turned around and rushed somewhere behind the house. Olga, frozen, continued to watch. A tall, stately old woman in a dark, long dress came out of the house onto the porch. She looked sternly at the girl who was still standing in the yard with her head down. "Leah, where is your sister?" the old woman asked. "She ran away, Granny, where I don't know." The girl answered meekly. "Find her and come back. Soon Anton will come, there is a lot of work to do." The old woman said sternly and disappeared into the house. Here Olga began to realize that she had fallen into the distant past, to the time when her grandmother Amalia was a young girl, almost a teenager. Her grandmother used to tell her that if you got into the past, don't get in front of your blood relatives, trouble might happen. Now, Olga decided to watch her grandmother and her sister anyway. How to return, she does not know. Olga saw her young grandmother Amalia, who was then called Leah, grinned and headed to where Fema was hiding. The girl noted to herself that both sisters were beautiful, but Fema was more flamboyant than Amalia. While Olga was pondering, she did not notice how a young man approached her and watched her with interest. "Am I disturbing you?" A mocking voice sounded behind Olga's back. The girl almost jumped from surprise. "Who are you?" Olga blurted out. "Anton. And who are you? Your face seems familiar, yet I don't know you," stretched out the guy. He was very handsome and smiled kindly. "Olga, it can be Olga," replied the girl. "What are you looking for, Olga?" Anton suddenly became serious. "Let's go to Grandma. Is this your grandmother?" she asked. "Not mine, but my fiancée's. I'm learning from her, an apprentice so to speak," the guy answered, pulling Olga with him. They entered the house, which smelled of baked goods and herbs. However, Olga quickly found the source of the odor. There were bunches of herbs hanging from the ceiling to dry. "Sofya Petrovna, I've brought you a guest," Anton said loudly. So the great-grandmother's name was Sofya, Olga thought. So far she felt quite calm and had no fear. The old woman Olga had seen before came out to them. They met eyes and Sofya literally turned pale before her eyes. All the colors of life seemed to have gone out of her at once. Her pupils dilated, drops of sweat appeared above her lip. The woman was frightened to death. "You!" she shrieked. "Why? What do you mean?" The girl was confused. "What have I done?" Sofya Petrovna, instead of answering, turned around and went deep into the house. Anton was confused, but still followed. Olga heard muffled voices. Deciding not to wait, the girl entered the house uninvited and went to the voices. "Why were you scared?" asked Olga. The old woman was half lying on the sofa, her face still pale but more alive. "Go, we need to talk!" She sent Anton away. "I am listening to you." The girl sat down in the armchair and prepared to listen. The old woman was silent and suddenly laughed. "Yes, our breed, you can see at once, you go to the end, not afraid." "Well done," said Sofya Petrovna. "Listen carefully, I knew for a long time that one of you would appear here. I saw you but I didn't know your name. Olga, a beautiful name, that was my mother's name. Our family is ancient, not just witches, but witches with knowledge and power. Amalia controls time and space, Fima has teleportation and telekinesis, you name it, and both are endowed with farsightedness. As the girls grow, so do their powers. I saw their destiny the moment they were born. They're cousins, but that doesn't change anything. They were supposed to replace me in time, but alas, I see that's not how it will end." And then Anton came into their lives. "I can tell you honestly, you're my great-granddaughter. I was glad when the girls became friends with him, but I didn't realize how things would turn out. I can't let them become enemies. Amalia and Euphemia are bound together in the same way you will be later. Leah is upset that Anton has chosen Fima and I'm afraid of how bad things might get. But that's not what Amalia, that is, grandmother said," Olga said, embarrassed. "Couldn't they see into the future? They can see other people's futures, but they can't see their own, and that's why they can't predict events now. I know what will happen later, that's why I'm scared." "How do you live?" Olga asked quietly. "It's such a burden. That's how I live, girl. And you were sent here so that you could see the truth and tell the others," Sofya said. "Give me your hand, don't be afraid, you'll see everything for yourself." Sofya took out a needle from a box standing next to her, pierced Olga's finger and her own, and mixed their blood. Then she recited some incantation, dipped her finger in this liquid, and sharply pressed the girl between her eyebrows. For a moment, Olga lost her bearings in space. She was dragged forward somewhere as if she had fallen into a maelstrom where she was spinning and twirling. And then she saw. Anton looks lovingly at Euphemia, embraces her tenderly. Someone is watching them. The watcher is angry, for she always gets what she wants. Olga sees Amalia arguing with her sister, calling her not worthy of such a man, insults her and promises to take revenge if Fima decides to agree to marry Anton. The girl sees Amalia offer herself to Anton, who rejects her with squeamishness. Amalia weeps and promises revenge on both of them. Then Olga sees everything in bits and pieces. Amalia is writing a spell on a piece of paper. In front of her is a cast iron on the stove in which a black liquid like tar is bubbling and boiling. She reads the spell and burns the ashes, throwing them into the liquid. It fails again. Amalia sits satisfied but barely makes eye contact with Sofya, lowering her head. Fima, for the third day, is frantic in heat and fever. Sofya cannot bring down the temperature and the local feldsher only waves his hands. Anton hurriedly goes to town to bring a doctor. Sofya sees that her grandchildren's illness is of a magical nature and doctors will not help her now. That is why she is bitter. One granddaughter has one foot in the grave, the other has played around and can get so much from the powers that she will not be able to pick up the bones. Amalia sat by her sister's bedside and whispered terrible words in her ear. Fima opened her eyes, staring at her in horror. Her body and mind did not obey her, and her lips whispered what Amalia demanded of her. She willingly gave up her powers and abilities. Fima could not resist her sister's evil will, and after the last drop of strength left her body, fell into oblivion. Anton returned early in the morning with the doctor. He saw that Sofya had aged that night as if by 20 years. Amalia, on the other hand, did not look discouraged or upset. Fima lay unconscious. What? He rushed to Sofya Petrovna. Euphemia no longer has the gift. She's a simple human being now. Yes, she certainly has more potential even than you, but she doesn't have those powers anymore, Sofya said bitterly. Olga fell into darkness again. She was twisting and turning and was shown the past again. Sofya Petrovna's funeral. An old woman in a coffin in a black dress. It was night outside the window. Fima and Amalia are at the coffin. Fima looks haggard and tired and as if aged, while Amalia looks younger. Anton stood in the shadows watching the sisters. Hatred burned in his eyes, but as soon as Amalia looked at him, his expression immediately changed. And then Olga saw further into the future. Amalia had completely taken over her sister, suppressing her will and taking her power. She could not take Fima's power, so she had to put it in a secret place, sealing it for the time being. The girl flew into the void again. She woke up in the same room on the sofa. Sofya sat next to her and smiled bitterly. Do not be afraid, there are no girls. And intervene? Olga only asked. If you intervene and change the past, there is a chance that you will not be born. After all, we do not know what fate will happen then. Better or worse, after all it will change the present, the future, and entail unpredictable events, Sofya replied. Now you know the truth. But was it necessary, this truth? I'm not sure, Olga said sadly. It's time to go back. I'll help, Sofya started talking. In my present, my grandmother is dead. That's why she can't see you. I have slightly different powers. I can do it without harming myself or you. The old woman lightly kissed her future great-granddaughter on the cheek. Blessings. Sofya took a piece of charcoal, quickly drew a circle on the wall the size of the door, ran her hand over it and whispered some words. The wall was covered as if with waves. The highlighted surface was silvery and sparkling. It became brighter and brighter. Olga froze with fear and delight. Here in this, Amalia was right. Great-grandmother is a great witch. Olga boldly reached out her hand and was pulled somewhere in the darkness. A sudden intense pain came over her, knocking the air out of her lungs. I wonder if one dies in the past or along the way, what happens to the body in the present and how it will affect the fate of all. With that last thought, Olga flew into the void. Alice and Stephanie sat by her sister's bedside. 3 days had passed. Olga had not returned. Their greatest fear was that her sister would be stuck there and unable to return. Steph could have created a portal and followed her, but she didn't know what time she had traveled to. You could get lost between times. Fima used maps and a pendulum to try to find out where Olga was, but the maps did not show that she was alive and would return. All that remained was to wait.